Well, hey there, happies. How y'all doing, huh? Long time no podcast, I know. You know, lately, I've been thinking a lot about change, the word change. Change in our lives and, changes. Being able to change or being afraid to change, because there's a good friend of mine who lives out in California. Actually, I did a podcast about him maybe a couple years ago. His name is Eric Barnes. If you're curious to reference that podcast, it's under his name, the Singularity Podcast, Eric Barnes. And, my friend Eric is really a creative person, very interesting person. And inspiring to me in a lot of ways, and we met a long time ago, back when pipe choir first started, even before pipe choir really had gotten going, and we hit it off. We became friends, and it just so happened that he was a video producer and I was making music, and we got together and we remained friends for 30 years now, so I'm talking to my friend Eric the other day, and there's all this stuff going on in California, and my friend Eric a few years back had decided to sell all of his belongings and move out to the Mojave Desert and live in a tiny home on a pretty substantial sized piece of land out there in the desert, kind of isolated, kind of by himself, but he's kind of an interesting character, and it makes sense to me anyway. It would make sense, and there was a pretty big change for him, and he was not really afraid to make that kind of change. I don't think he ever has been. He's not the kind of person who is afraid to change. It's probably one of his strong points, one of his strengths. But we were talking and just kind of talking about the wildfires in California and talking about the homelessness and this mass exodus of people out of California. And, he's one of the people that I know personally that, I can talk to about that kind of stuff. And his opinion will be an educated opinion, And it was kind of funny because I was under the impression from him, just, I guess, by assumption, I was just assuming, that he was pretty confident about staying where he lived and everything. And, he was going to continue to live in this tiny house out there in the desert, even though, there's this mass exodus of people out of California. But he confided in me and he kind of told me that he has lately been really kind of getting sick of, one, living in that tiny home. It's kind of, too small, so, he tried the experiment and he lived it out, and now he's ready to change. He wants to change. And, so he's going about the business of, finding another place to live, dealing with the land and how to rent out this tiny home to somebody or something, out there in the desert, which is probably next to impossible, but nothing is impossible for Eric. So, I was kind of taken aback a little bit, and it just kind of got me to thinking about that whole notion of change, not, political change, but I guess political, any kind of change that is big or small or personal or public, or, there's just so many different permutations of change. The definition is probably a pretty simple one, but, it can be applied to pretty much anything in the human experience. The seasons change, our personalities change, our bodies change, I mean, I know for sure one thing I can't stand is the fact that my eyesight, after you get a little bit older, your eyesight starts to change. And, I can't stand it. I've talked about it before, I know, but I'm going to say it again. I just can't stand it. That kind of change. I rely so much on my eyes, and to have that diminish in any way is such a major inconvenience for me. But that's just one example of change. I mean, there's different kinds of change and different levels of change. And, some change is very serious and some is not so serious. Some is actually pretty fun and elective, Some change is, decided by you, or some change is, you have no control over it. You have to change. Something happens in your life, or someone, exits your life or enters your life, or something like that happens, and you have to, change. You can't stay the same. You have to change. So like I said, talking to Eric, it just got me to thinking about all this. It's a pretty complex thing to think about. And, I figured in lieu of my last podcast or last couple, they've kind of been either political, or I did those 5-day podcasts where I'm changing the theme, or, I change every day. When I do those 5-day podcasts, rather than doing just one theme, I'll start on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Each day I have a different thought. Well, I thought today would be a good opportunity to return back to this idea of like one single topic. And that topic obviously is change. But there again, there's a change that I elected to do. It's a change that I've chosen to do, like to change my podcasts, right? That's another decision. It's a form of change, right? And speaking of changing podcasts, I don't know if you're aware of it or not. I don't know if you follow Joe Rogan or not, but I do, and I really enjoy a lot of his podcasts. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And, recently he just made that deal with Spotify to switch his podcast over to their platform, and for like $350 million or something crazy like that. And it's a big deal. That's a big change, and that's going to change a lot in the world of podcasting. But okay, so the new podcast and the new location starts, and it's like, oh my gosh, you know what? They changed everything. They changed everything about that podcast except for Joe Rogan. So the set is different. It's just a very, very unusual and disappointing change. And that's not just my opinion. If you go to any one of his more recent podcasts, you can see the comments that people are leaving. And, a lot of the comments are mean-spirited, but that's kind of like typical, on the internet. Very often the voices of kindness and, goodwill are drowned out by the voices of, shitheads and people that have bad will, Unfortunately, that's how the world works. But anyway, I digress. Back to this idea of the Joe Rogan podcast. It's a perfect example of, at least in my opinion, how change can be bad, and it could be too much. It could be overdone. Personally, I think it was a mistake. I could be wrong. Maybe time will prove me wrong, but I think that it is a mistake that Joe Rogan and his team and the Spotify people, whoever sat down to make those decisions, they made a wrong decision. They made a lot of them, actually. And they changed his podcast too much, to the point where it's really difficult to watch. I mean, at least to me it is. It's difficult to watch. I guess he's got some, I don't know, Hindu symbol or something behind him on the wall. And, I wasn't sure what it was at first. To me, it looked like somebody had described it as what was it, an alien stove? That's what it looks like. I thought it was kind of like circuitry, like it was supposed to be circuitry for some kind of, technology or something. But here it turns out that it's a spiritual symbol. And, this coming from a guy who has like no problem, denying Christianity or any other religion. But here's this symbol behind him, make of that whatever you will. But it's like, oh, brother, you had such a good thing. Why did you change everything? Why did you change everything? That was such a huge mistake. I don't get it. I just don't get it. You have a good thing going. Aren't you wise? And well, here's the thought, at least I have, is like, you got that thing going. You started that podcast. You did it. And you built it up to what it was. Don't you have the common sense to know you don't change everything? Like you try to keep it, at least when you're in transition, try to keep it, relatable to the people who have helped you get to where you are. These millions of people, myself included. It's like, oh, too much change. It's an example of it, right? It can happen. And I don't know. Maybe you don't care. Maybe you're the kind of person who embraces change and you like change. And I like to think that I am in a lot of ways, but, not with everything, and that's kind of an interesting thing to think about in and of itself, right? Deciding what kind of change you want in your life that is good or bad, and what motivates that change. Is it like something that's internal, something that, is driven from within inside of you as a person, as a personality, or a creative person, or an analytical person, whatever it is, whatever you are, does that change, that desire for change, where does that come from? Where does it originate? What motivates your desire to change? Think about that. That's a pretty heavy question. What motivates your desire? You, the person listening to this podcast right now, what drives or what motivates your desire to change or your desire to not change? What kind of things motivate that? Are you motivated by fear? Are you motivated to change by fear? Are you motivated to not change by fear? Are you motivated by financial gain or secondary gain? Or, are you just motivated by excitement and experimentation? Scientific experimentation, just sometimes it's good to do that, right? I think it is. I'm going to get a sip of my coffee here. I suggest that you do the same thing. Hopefully you have your coffee with you right now. And if you don't, maybe while I'm taking a sip, go grab one. You won't miss much. But hang on one second. Oh, man. Oh, I swear. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. That is the best cup of coffee I have ever had. The best cup of coffee you can ever have is the one that you're drinking. Okay, so, I talked about Eric and how he inspired this whole podcast and this idea of change, thinking about change, and talked about Joe Rogan. So, maybe I'll talk a little bit about myself. I kind of have, been thinking about it, and, I'm the kind of person that likes to change. I do. Certain things I don't want to change, but definitely most of the time I want things to change. Like my haircut, my beard, the clothes I wear. I like to change. I like to change those things. I don't like to get stuck in one kind of look or one kind of thing. There are some things that, don't change very much, like the kinds of shoes that I wear, but personally, I kind of find a lot of value in changing frequently, you know. But sometimes change comes around and it's not something that you planned, or it's not something that you necessarily wanted, you know, but you got to change. Like, I had some issues with my health a while back, a few years back in 2014. Wow, I can't believe it. It was 6 years ago already. But, you know, health-wise, I kind of got some bad news and thought that I was in some trouble health-wise, so I had to change, you know, and I hated it. Because one of the things I don't like to change is, like, the food I eat, you know, the type of food I eat, the kind of food I eat. I don't like that to be determined by anything other than, you know, my palate and my taste, you know, what I want to eat. But there I was in a situation where the doctor was telling me, you really have to change. So I did. Reluctantly, I had to. And tried to stick with it, you know, tried to stay with it. I want to live, you know. So no problems with that anymore. But still, there's yet another example of that idea of change, you know. Change I didn't want, you know. Another form of change, you know, over the past few years, you know, with my music and everything, my popularity has grown a little bit, and, you know, a little more international now than I was 6 years ago, let's say. So I've had the opportunity to kind of get a taste of that kind of thing. And you know what? I don't necessarily really, you know, well, I guess I should be more specific. You know, it's like this idea, I think about this, okay? After hours, when I'm just, you know, I have time to think, I think about the idea of, like, what do I want as an artist and as a musician? You know, there's a whole lot of change involved in doing something like what I'm doing. There's this concept of change is perpetual. And there's certain kinds of change that are good, you know, and I have to kind of be open to, you know, like, for example, you know, as you know, I'm releasing new music, right? And I have, throughout the process of writing these songs, you know, and putting them together, recording them, I have, you know, had to kind of submit myself intellectually to this notion of, you know, I have a plan of what I want to do, but more often than not, with this particular group of songs, this collection of songs, I've had to change my plan as I went along. And that's not usually how I operate, okay? I'm usually pretty precise and concise about what I want and what I'm gonna do. But, you know, I intentionally changed, you know, entering into this new album, I changed my thinking. I talked about it in a podcast before. I know I did, where, you know, it's like I had wanted my new music to be a little less conventional, a little less linear, you know, than my previous songs that I've recorded and released. So this process of putting this album together has really been kind of open-ended. Even though I have some kind of plan in my mind of what I want the outcome to be, you know, in the end, what I want it to sound like, I can give you a couple of examples. I can give you a recent one where I had a plan, you know, and I had to change that plan. And it wasn't anything that I could really decide. It was kind of decided for me by, you know, what, fate or something else, where, you know, like, okay, I have this song that I was going to release after Sedusa, my most recent song that I'm releasing, Sedusa. And there's a lot of change with that song. Let me tell you, there were a lot of little micro changes along the way with that song that, you know, is an older one. But anyway, the song after that, I had a plan to release the song called The Dotted Line, which was an older song, and I wanted to revisit it and give it a facelift. But what wound up happening was, by some mishap of guitar tuning, believe it or not, the song The Dotted Line was, at least from my memory, okay, it was a guitar riff that I wrote a long time ago, and I did it with the top string on my guitar tuned down to C. Okay, at least that was my working memory of this guitar line. But so I'm getting ready to play the guitars into this song, and I tuned down to C, and I started to play what I remembered to be the chord progression of the dotted line, and it wound up being wrong. When I played it against the original guitars that existed, I realized there was a major discrepancy there, and for the life of me, even to this moment right now, I cannot figure out what I was playing. I tried, the drop C tuning on my guitar, didn't work. I went back up to standard tuning, E. That didn't work. I went to D. That didn't work. And then I remembered that at some point in my songwriting in the past, 10 or 15 years, I had done a song. I don't remember what song it was, but one of the songs I did, I tuned that string from E to F. I went up, okay? So I'm like, maybe that's it. So I tuned my guitar up to F, the top string. I start to play the chord progression, and then I realized, okay, that it was the same chord progression as the dotted line, but it was another song I released called Love is the Happiest Way. All right. So I kind of on the fly, decided, well, while I have these drums going and I have this tempo, everything's there, I'll just play the guitar line for Love is the Happiest Way against these drums, and we'll see how it goes. And the next thing this song, The Dotted Line, which was slated to be next in order and in sequence, was no longer there. It was no longer the next song. The next song would be Love is the Happiest Way. And at the end of this podcast, I'll let you hear the original version of Love is the Happiest Way, because let me tell you, this new version that I did of it is really leaps and bounds, distant, away from that original version. And it was not the plan. I had to change, it changed, and I didn't really plan it. I didn't want it to change, but that's how this album has gone. It's just these weird kind of cosmic events that take place, and it changes my plan, I can give you another example. Okay, this is just this is how it's happening, right? I did a song called An Ode to the Spirit. Okay, a very old idea that I had, and I had decided to redo it and put it on this album, so I did. And the original version didn't have drums. It was more of like a orchestral kind of piece. But I decided in this new version I would try at least to put some drums in and just kind of see how it went, see where it went. And it sounded pretty good. And that's the version that you'll hear, on the album that you hear. But what you probably don't realize, okay, and this is a crazy, crazy thing, totally unplanned change, okay? I found this wave file, okay? It was an old, experimental wave file thing, a collage of sounds that I had made a long time ago, okay? At least 20 years, maybe more. And I had made it, and I had it on a CD somewhere, and I happened to find it, and I thought, wow, that's an interesting sounding thing, maybe I can use that for a new idea, like as a jumping off point. Well, I load this this cacophony of sound that I had made, this wave file, stereo wave file. I loaded it into my system, into my session for an ode to the spirit. So I had the guitar line, the drums, and everything from an ode to the spirit. But then I introduced this new weird experimental thing into that mix, and it just so happened to work out chromatically. It was sympathetic to the guitars that were there and everything. Do you follow me? I hope you do. It's probably a little confusing, but the long and the short of it is that as soon as I put this experimental wave file thing into this session, all of a sudden an ode to the spirit became a completely different song. All I changed was just inserting this wave file into the song. Same drums, same vocals, same guitars, same everything, except for this new wave that I put in there, this new keyboard based cacophony of sound, and it completely changed the song. And then that song, that thing that I created that day became the song Lust. Yeah. So if you go back and listen to an ode to the spirit, and then you go and listen to Lust, you'll hear it. It's exactly the same song, except for that key change. Same guitar lines, same notes, different lyrics, of course, different melodies and stuff, different arrangement, I guess, a little bit. But, this weird experimental thing spawned this song, Lust, that wound up becoming the song I was working on. And I didn't want to. I didn't choose that. It just kind of happened to work out that way. It was another one of those cosmic tumbler things where it's like, what a strange thing. And I thought it was kind of cool to do that, right? To take an existing song and use it again, but change it and make it so that probably the audience wouldn't even notice that it's the same, but it is. You could practically lay them on top of each other and it's the same song, just a different chord progression or a different key. It's crazy. I didn't plan that. That change came about and I just had to go with it. So here I am now working on this song, Love is the Happiest Way, this new version. And, that was not the plan. That was not going to be song number 11. It was not. The Dotted Line was supposed to be song number 11, and I was going to close the album with The Dotted Line. That was my original plan. But now, I've got this version of Love is the Happiest Way and this version of The Dotted Line, and they're both very similar, same tempo, same chord progression, just tuned up. The top string is just tuned to a different tuning, right? There's that idea of change. I had no plan to do that. It just kind of worked. And, there I was. Instead of working on The Dotted Line, I was working on Love is the Happiest Way. A strange thing, but another example of, undecided change. It just worked out. It just happened. And, I guess I suppose I have to embrace that when that comes around. It's pretty exciting when you realize that kind of thing or when that kind of thing happens. But, not my plan, Anyway, so back to this idea of change, okay? Have you ever thought about that? About your own personal ability to change or your own personal desire to change? Do you accept and embrace change or do you avoid it? Are you the kind of person that likes things to kind of stay the same, even keel, I would say that I am. I would, although I do like to change things. I like to experiment and I like to play around with ideas and stuff, for the most part, there is a part of me that wants to have things stay the same, and I'm the kind of person, I guess, like when I go to a restaurant, let's say, and I find on the menu there's something I want to get. The first time I ever go to the restaurant, first time I'm there, I'll pick something, it'll be good, and then every time I go there, like my instinct is to get what I'm already familiar with, right? You understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't change that. If we're going to go to this restaurant, this is what I eat when I go to that restaurant. Now, my wife, thankfully, is the kind of person that will encourage me to change. She'll kind of suggest it. And, I might be reluctant to listen to her, okay? Because I don't want to take a risk, in getting something that I don't want or I'm not going to like. That sounds funny to me just saying it, okay? But it's true. I'm that way. And she'll kind of like nudge me a little bit, like, here, why don't you try something different? In fact, especially when it comes to food or anything outside of the music, really, if it were not for her, I would probably never change. I would just keep going the way I am. But, I have this person in my life that kind of encourages that. And you know what? I gotta say, after being married for 16 years now, it's worked to my advantage. It's a good thing. Change is a good thing sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes it's a good thing. Now that's just with something like, food on a menu or something, but you can take that and apply it to anything else in life, right? I mean, haven't you ever met somebody who just will not change? They won't change. It's like it could be the most frustrating thing in the world, that this person will not change. I mean, I've even seen people that they kind of get like, stuck, they get stuck in a look. Let's say when they were 18, their hairstyle and their clothing, was popular. It helped them be popular, or it worked, it didn't cause any conflict. They weren't made fun of, or they weren't ridiculed, right? So, 40 years later, they have the same haircut and they wear the same kind of clothes. Like, they didn't want anything to change. They didn't want to run that risk, of changing and then having it backfire. And I suppose, like when I was talking earlier about being motivated by fear to change, sometimes maybe we're motivated by fear to not change, probably more often than not, right? Like, it's really kind of, it's kind of a serious thing in one's life, isn't it? To not cause conflict. I mean, most people, I think, don't really want conflict. They want to have things be steady, peaceful, easygoing, right? And as soon as you start introducing this idea of change, you start rocking the boat, you start changing things. And that can be very, very uncomfortable for a lot of people. And for myself included. But fortunately, I think just by my nature of being, a creative person or something, or at least, trying to be intellectually open, right, and see the truth in things, and I try, right, I gotta say that, I do have the ability to change. I do have that ability. I can look at myself in the mirror and analyze myself enough to know, you know what, buddy, you need to change. Something needs to change, right? Do you ever do that for yourself? Do you ever think like that? Like, I really this needs to end. You reach a situation maybe like with a friend, where they keep disappointing you, right? Or they keep doing the same thing that is not good something you do not appreciate, you do not like, and you reach that point where you say, I gotta change. This has got to change. I am not doing this anymore. There's been a few things like that in my life. How about you? Have you ever changed? Have you ever really had a massive change? And something that you elected yourself, you decided yourself, not encouraged by anyone else, not some outside influence. You just kind of go, you know what? I'm done. I'm done with this. I'm done with this. It's time for me to change. It's time for change. Maybe I'm thinking about all this stuff because I'm, doing my semi-annual clean out of my studio, because it gets pretty nasty in my studio. I spend a lot of time in here. There's a lot of food eaten in here. There's a lot of just life lived in this room. And after 6 months, it can get pretty nasty, even though I try to keep a handle on it. It gets away from me at some point. So every 6 months, I make a point of going through my studio, cleaning it out very good, removing everything from the room, steam clean the carpets, wipe down the walls, the whole 9 yards. Like I clean it really good, and I throw away a lot of things. And there's a lot of change that takes place during my semi-annual studio cleaning. Things get moved around, rearranged, new environment, clean environment, organized, tight. It's really kind of nice. It's why I haven't been releasing a whole lot of new music lately, because I've been, my studio has been down due to the cleaning. But it's such a good idea. I don't know if you're a creative person or not, or anything, but if you are, and you're like me, you're motivated by your environment, like it has a lot to do with the vibe and your creativity. For me, it's definitely that way. And having like a space that is organized and clean and reset, like ready, it's a very good change to make. It's a very good practice, change. I could talk about change. There's so many aspects of it, It's good to change. It's good, to not hold on so tight to certain things, and, likes and dislikes. Those things change as you get older, right? Your likes and dislikes. Like, for instance, when I was younger, much younger, I really, really liked football a lot. I grew up in a city, Cleveland, where, the Cleveland Browns, well, they weren't a religion, but they were really close to that, in that town. I don't care what anybody says who's from Cleveland. It's not a baseball town. It's not a basketball town. They don't even have a hockey team. It was a football town. It was a steel town, and it was a football town. And I was raised on football. I played football on a team. I played football in my front yard. I watched football on TV. It was cultural, right? But lately, I gotta say, especially lately, that Tom Brady has left the Patriots. No, just kidding. Cam Newton's doing just fine. And Tom Brady hopefully will do just fine as well. Wish him well. I wish him well. Sad that he left. It's a sad thing. It really is. There was sadness in my house when he left New England. But, it's a little bit better. Not as painful with Cam Newton playing as well as he is right now. We'll see how long that lasts. Anyway, my point was, lately I've kind of found myself getting really turned off by the NFL, and it's not because of the politics and all that stuff going on. I couldn't care less about that stuff. I think it's kind of, I don't know, not necessary and not worth getting upset about or anything. I don't even pay attention really. But what I don't like about football, this is a major turnoff, is a major change too, in my personality or my likes and dislikes. There's this diva quality to football players now that I just can't stand. I mean, if you remember me talking in past episodes about the one thing that I cannot stand is like arrogance. I can't stand it. Okay, it instantly pisses me off. And when I see these football players, these NFL players, as talented as they are, as athletic as they are, whatever, with this attitude like they are gods, like they are royalty, and they are all that in a bag of chips, right? Oh, I just can't stand it. And as you know, recently I started to pay attention to hockey, and I never really grew up with hockey. It was unfamiliar to me. We didn't have a hockey team in Cleveland, but here in Massachusetts, Boston, we have the Bruins, one of the original six, and so recently I've tuned into hockey, and I've found myself, believe it or not, actually liking hockey, okay, more than football. Doesn't sound like a very big deal, but trust me, okay? Like I said, football for me was cultural. So even the notion of me placing any other sport above football, I don't know. But I'll tell you what, with these hockey players, they are so athletic. They're fantastic athletes. And just standing on ice skates, for me is like, forget about it. I'm not coordinated enough to do that, and to watch these guys just do what they do. And then there is no diva quality to it. They don't talk about how great they are. They don't celebrate and dance. And, it's just a completely different mindset, a completely different attitude towards the sport. And I'll tell you what, it appeals to me a lot more, a hell of a lot more than football does. I can't take it, after a while. I can't take the arrogance and the braggadocio, this having to say how great you are all the time and make the world believe it. It's like, calm down. You're an athlete and you're really good, but you're not a deity, and with hockey, you just get none of that. It's a completely different code, a different way. And like I said, it doesn't sound like much, but for me, it's a seismic shift in my likes and dislikes. And it's real. And that happens, that can happen with me. I can change. And not just with sports and football and hockey. I mean, I can change. I can look at myself. I'm a happy innovator. I can look in the mirror. I can say, hey, you know what? It's time to change, And, I've been ranting about change. I mean, I could do probably 3 podcasts on this. I don't know. Maybe I'll talk about it again after I think about it a little bit more in the next podcast. But I suppose for now, I should probably just get out of here and, get on with my new song that I'm working on, and then making a video and all that stuff. I got to do that. And finish the deep clean of my studio, right? Get the finishing touches done. But yeah, so I'll leave it there for now, and I'll pick it up probably next week. We'll see. It depends on how much time I have, obviously. But I always want to talk. Okay, it's just so you know, I always want to talk, but I don't always have time to. So. Thank you for your patience. I'm not like other podcasts where, I deliver one every week or something, every Tuesday or something. It's like I kind of do it when I can. But just so you know, I always want to. And just because I want to doesn't mean that I can get to it and get it done. So, I guess it's, maybe something I should... Maybe it's something I should change. Another change. Oh, okay. Anyway, So, ladies and gentlemen, my happy innovators, my dear, dear happy innovators, stay tuned for new music coming from Pipe Choir. Got something coming really soon, and then I got everything kind of like in the can ready for the next. I mean, I got it all mapped out, provided that nothing changes. I don't foresee any changes. Unforeseen change. Okay, yeah. And foreseen change. Those are two. That's a whole nother podcast. Anyway, this is Mike Bostwick from Pipe Choir Records signing off. And remember, folks, if you want to keep what you've got to give it away. Take it easy, everybody. Okay, happy innovators. I got some music for you today. I'm going to share with you, I think, the song Love is the Happiest Way, which is going to be the next Pipe Choir song, at least according to my plan right now. It's going to be the next Pipe Choir song that's released, a new version of it. And I'm also going to share with you the dotted line, which is going to come immediately after Love is the Happiest Way. And, I talked about it in the podcast earlier, that they're both really technically the same song, just tuned differently in a different key. The chord progressions being played in a different key. So you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about by listening to these two songs back to back. You can hear how just by tuning the top string of my guitar to F instead of E, it becomes a completely different song. The mood and the vibe and everything changes just by tuning that string. Kind of neat, and an opportunity for you to hear a preview, really, of the next two songs for my new Pipe Choir album, and they will be the two songs that conclude the album. It'll be a 12-song album, and these will be the last two. Love is the Happiest Way and the Dotted Line. So, without any further ado, check it out. Have a good week, everybody. Stay safe, have fun, and, contemplate that idea of change. And maybe I'll talk about it a little bit more in the next podcast. We'll see. Maybe I'll change my mind. Peace out, everybody. hold your heart in my hands. I won't let you down, and I'd understand. I vow to you, I vow to you, woman, I am your man. Love is the happiest way. 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 Stay to the left for 2 days. Figured it out just today. Signed on the dotted line. My love is your love is mine. Hear your distress call, beacon for you, hand in the void, shaking and sizing. My love is your love is mine. I need the sun, I need someone. I need the sun, I need someone. Signed on the dotted